might you prove to someone who doesn't believe in inspiration that the Gospels are a reliable record of the life of Jesus? Well, one of the ways that you can do that is to think about the general reliability of the documents themselves. A late 19th, early 20th century archaeologist named William Ramsay goes on a survey of Asia Minor as an unbeliever. In fact, he doesn't believe that Acts was actually written by a traveling companion of Paul. He believes it was a later 2nd century writing pretending to be written by someone who traveled with Paul. At the end of his excavations, he instead writes that Luke is one of the greatest historians who has ever lived. A later scholar who was a believer at the beginning, named Colin Hemer, studies Acts further, building on Ramsay's work, and goes through the book of Acts and lists 84 specific facts in the last 16 chapters of the book of Acts that have been confirmed by archaeology, by inscriptions, by coins, by writings, by historians, all accurate all the way through, including some incredibly difficult things to get right if you weren't there at the time. More recently, a British scholar named Peter Williams has talked extensively about the accuracy of the Gospels in terms of the names that they use. That they use, in fact, 1st century Jewish Palestinian names in the right proportion to the name frequency that was used back then. On top of that, they had the right features, what he calls disambiguation. That Simon was never just Simon, he was always Simon the Tanner, or Simon the Leper, or Simon Peter, or whoever it may be, because that was in fact the most frequently used name, while lower frequency names don't have that trait because they don't have to be clarified. That kind of information is very hard to duplicate in another place at a later time. Imagine that you're making up a story, pretending that it is history, and you're writing it about France 150 years ago. What are the top 10 French names 150 years ago in France? Even if you had access to the internet and a couple of hours to do research, you probably couldn't get that precise. Yet if you were there, and you're just telling the story, it would be incredibly accurate. The same thing's true with place names and place data. The Gospels use more than 20 different names of cities and villages in the land of Palestine. If you compare that to the Apocryphal Gospels, these things that actually were written a few hundred years later, supposedly written by Thomas or Barnabas or whoever else it may be, they only mention 2 city names total among all of them combined. Jerusalem, the capital of the entire region that anybody could get right, and Nazareth, that only one of them uses, and in fact it misuses as a part of Jesus' name. All of this is pointing us in the direction that the Gospels are reliable, generally at least. So that if you're talking to a neighbor who doesn't believe in inspiration, they still can trust the basic veracity of the historical record. If you'd like more information on this, a great place to start is Peter Williams' book, Can We Trust the Gospels? It's a quick and easy read and filled with great information.